Yeah. Welcome to the Brothers in Influence podcast, where we stand to encourage, inspire, and add value to Black men in the areas of life, leadership, and community. We consist of five brothers discussing relevant topics with candor and care. We're excited. Thank you for tuning in. Let's go. All right.
What up? What up? What up?
My guys. Listen, my name is Ian Williams, the Purpose Coach. You can find me on Twitter at Son of the King 02. You can find me on Instagram with my beautiful family, my wife and my 5-year-old son, at Team Reconcile. And I just happen to be, just happens on Mondays around 6 o'clock. I just happen to be shoulder to shoulder with some dynamic, powerful, my old school hype going. Man, I just want to give them an opportunity to. I want to get out the way. I just need to get out of the way so they can introduce themselves. Forget the opportunity. We step back.
Hey, okay. Hey, I appreciate that. Hey, this is the day. Locksmith coming at you once again. Hey, I'm excited to be with you guys again on Monday. Hey, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. But I'm excited about today and what we got going on today. Shantae.
Shantae Price here once again. I am your. I wish I was like the leadership locksmith, but I'm your leadership coach and your financial coach. I'm working on something catchy like leadership locksmith, though. Don't worry about it. I'm working on it. We're back once again. What's this, episode 14?
14.
Man, we moving along, man. So last week, same. We was talking about health, and now I'm sorry. What was the subtitle? Ian. It's
You talking about the hashtag Men's Health Month?
Yeah, I'm saying last week it was healthy, but it was, what was the subtitle? I forget.
Man, husband, father.
Mm-hmm.
Man, husband, and father. Yeah. And continuing with that, now we're talking about healthy and fatherhood and identity, and we have a very special guest today. Good friend of mine, consider him to be a brother. Norman Young, and he is a family advocate and fatherhood involvement coordinator, and he is in the building. So Norm, you can officially introduce yourself to the people. You got such a long list of accomplishments.
All right. What up, though, man? I love this, man. I love just the whole setup, the production. I love to see my brothers do stuff in excellence. So, man, this is what's being done right now. So, yeah, man, it's good to be here. I'm in Grand Rapids right now. Do a lot of fatherhood work. Fatherhood is my calling. And I'm not the guy who has it all together in fatherhood, but I work with different fathers, and we work to build our own puzzle, to share our stories, to encourage those who are new fathers or who've been fathers for a long time.
Awesome. Okay, I had mentioned this to the guys, and we talked about it like backstage a minute ago, but I want to jump in with something, and you even texted to me, Norm, what we talked about. I think it's going to be very interesting to get input from everybody too. But what was it? Feeling like a good dad, but a bad parent. And you had posted something about that, and I told you when I synced it, it just a weight lifted off of me because I was feeling like that so much with my daughter. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I was just feeling like a little overwhelmed, a little stressed, just feeling like, a good dad, but a bad parent when dealing with her.
You said it. That feeling like I'm a good dad. I like to, me and my kids, we have fun. They love to be around me. They run up to me when they see me. It's all love. But when it comes to that parenting piece, like the intentionality of making sure they're in the right school and doing schoolwork with them and preparing them and teaching them financial literacy and, you know, that actual parenting and teaching piece is where I think a lot of us struggle. One thing that I learned too, though, I think is just more like as men, as Black men, we're more relational people. And I think a lot of times our counterparts are more this with parenting, but we can't do nothing if a relationship ain't built. A lot of times we won't even do business if it's no relationships. So I like to share our stories about building relationships, to grow, to still highlight that it's important to parent, but, you know, starting off with being a dad and building relationships too.
Awesome.
So
what would you say is the major difference between parenting and building?
Say it again. What's the difference between parenting and what? Say it again.
Relationship building.
I think parenting, somewhat, I think, honestly, I think the dad umbrella is first, being honest. I think that's the relationship. I think the parenting and is more of the structure learning day and making sure that you have the schedule and things like that is more of the attributes of being a dad. But sometimes we stop at just being a dad sometimes and don't get to the further parts of parenting and making sure that, you know, we taking that holistic almost approach with our kids, that we talking about the learning, the education. But like I said, I don't ever want to exclude of how important it is to build relationships. If there's something to be done, I think relationships is where it has to start. You know, my daughter, you know, when we're talking about working with like other people, one thing I noticed about her, she has to trust you and it has to be relationships there before she can take anything. So I'm always encouraging dads to start off with relationship building, especially dads who are coming in. I work with a lot of dads who are from re-entry, who have been in prison, or dads who just been out the picture. I just did a podcast with my dad, and he talked about when he found out my mom was pregnant, he ran away to the Army, right? You get a lot of dads who go out the way, and, you know, with time, that conscience beats up at them, and they try to come back home. And I always say, before you can do that parenting piece, I know that sounds different, you have to build that relationship first.
Yeah. Hey, when you that's good, man. But when you jumped in and kind of did your introduction, you dropped a nugget. And I'm the guy, I dig up nuggets. You drop a nugget, I'm gonna pick it up. Right. And the nugget you dropped was and I forget specifically, but it was along the lines of just building kind of with the work you do, but you know, help them build the puzzle. Yeah. Right. So when I hearing you guys talk about the difference between, you know, being a dad, being a father versus parenting, to me, I hear puzzle pieces. Right. So my question is this: in the grand scheme of everything that you're doing, and you help us put the puzzle, how do you see those two different pieces? Right. And I keep you saying the relationship is very relevant when I think about, again, it makes sense, but how do you put them together? Right. If I'm a dad and I still got to build that relationship and I still got to be a parent, right? That relationship is kind of that middle, like I got to be dad, I got to be a parent, but I got to build that relationship. So how do you help fathers do that component of building that relationship?
That's a good point. It's another conversation that comes up a lot about that relationship building, but still almost that parenting, that having boundaries, right? I think that's important, and it is in that relationship building, in conversation. A lot of it, I think, I don't want to go too far ahead, but we're talking about like discipline and things like that. A lot of that is the aftermath or a lack of having the conversation and building the boundaries of what is acceptable and what's not. And I think that's a part of the relationship building, spending time and letting them know, like, okay, no, these are things that we can do. These are things that, you know, will get you here or that we stay away from. And I think that's a part of the relationship building aspect too. If that answers some of the question, I get what you're saying. I think that's my best way of trying to answer it. I think within that relationship, you build boundaries. And then that's kind of how it translates more into parent. And I don't want to separate them too that strongly. It was like I said, like Shante said, it was one of my guys from Detroit just we were talking, and he's a single dad now. He lost the mother of his child to an overdose in January. He's trying to spend time with his kids and doing everything. He said, "Man, I feel like," I'm like, "How you holding up?" He said, "Man, I'm doing the dad thing, but that parenting piece is what he was missing." So
yeah. And I think that's just the nature of the beast, right? The parenting thing is that's just one of those things you're gonna get right, you're gonna get wrong. Man. But the beautiful thing is when you get it wrong, learn the lesson, apply the lesson, and then try it again, right? You know, we ask for grace when it comes to parenting. But yeah, I love it. Hey, y'all know me, fellas. He dropped another nugget, so I'm gonna. All right. This is what I do, bro. I just run with it if you keep dropping them. Like, so you were talking about the conversations, and I think that's key, right? So when you're dealing with your fathers and those that are trying to kind of, you know, build those relationships through those conversations. I mean, I think conversations, we even think about just men in general, right? So I have 2 girls. Mm-hmm. I got girls. I would say that we have a fair relationship. It'd be interesting. I'd like to bring them in on a podcast one time and ask them, like, so what do you think about me, real? Yeah. see what they say, right? But you know, I have conversations with them, right? But to your point, am I having a good dad conversation? Am I having a good parenting conversation? Like, how do you encourage men to have those courageous conversations with their children?
I think a lot of it to
build the relationship, so to speak.
So I think a lot of, are you saying some of the harder conversations too?
Yeah, I mean, because some, like in the cases that you're talking about, some of them that are kind of even, you know, trying to build that relationship, coming back into, you know, the lives of the children or whatever the case. I mean, there has to be a conversation, right? Absolutely. So how do you help them, you know, start that conversation? Like, I mean, for me, I don't even know how I would, you know, like, hey, what's going on? Yeah. Right. You know, like, and I mean that seriously, because I think a lot of times the biggest fear is that, again, it's not that I don't want to, I just don't know how. Yeah. Right. And that's usually the case for a lot of things that we deal with. I will do it if you just tell me how to do it. Yeah. Is there a script? Is there what's that magic bullet, right? That I can go in there and I can be like, you know, so.
Nah, man, good. I like this question. I think, a lot of it is taking that time and being intentional. One thing that I always tell the dads that I work with is if you don't have the conversation with them, the world is going to teach them, and probably a more something that's not in their best interest either. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the truth. You know, I've been working in education for about 10 years now, and I'm telling you, not the conversations that they have in high school, but the conversations they have in preschool. Will blow your mind. You know, it's just the reality. It is, you know, the exposure with the stuff that these kids are 10 years now, it's just different. It's different.
I can definitely understand that. I'm a daycare owner. Oh. So right now, there'd be some 3-year-olds that be coming and be having. I'd be like, "How you? Where you?
Good meal game."
Yeah, like how you get that? But you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So it's having that one thing that I've been focused on in talking to my daughter about topics, as far as being honest, they watching TikTok, girls twerking, and all of this extra stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It's focusing on her identity and who she is and how she was created. Right. And you make that standard, because everything else is like, no, this isn't who I am. This isn't who my dad taught me to be. So it's like, and when she comes home, she's telling me these conversations, because you cannot block them from the world. This ain't no Drake thing. I ain't hiding my kids from the world. You can't. It's just a reality. So it's having those conversations, being firm in their identity. One thing too is, even in the conversations, it's okay to say you don't know. I think as a parent and as a fatherhood coordinator, I say I don't know a lot. If you ask me a question I don't know, I'm going to tell you. But, you know, I'm going to take the time and I'm going to research. I'm going to look at other cities that's more, you know, ahead and advanced who trying other things. And it's being that intentional in parenting is one of the biggest things. But a lot of the conversations, they, you know, as much as I want to keep them clean and you know, try to sweep things under the rug and make it, it's just not the reality. I'm always being cautious of the language that I'm using, so it's not going over their head. But I am having the conversations, with an 8-year-old about protecting yourself, not like making sure that you're all, when you go swimming, that you're wearing a full bathing suit, because you have people who are inappropriate, who are looking at other things, right? If you just tell your kids, just be careful when you're out there, they don't know what you're talking about. So I have to be there are some people who don't look at you as a child and things like that. So it's just being very upfront, but then finding resources to back you up.
Yeah, I love the fact that you said that, and I'm done, fellas. Just the fact that about just being able to say I don't know, right? I think that's one of the things, even from a male's perspective, being a father. Sometimes I'll just be honest, speaking from my house, right? And you see, I look at the door real quick, make sure they ain't come and bust me in my head. But in my house, like my girls, boy, they think I know everything. Yeah. And it's just lately, like I go and say, like, I really don't know. Like everybody, like, Dad said you don't know. What that mean, right? But the truth is, if you don't know, you don't know. And I think that you do more harm if you try to act like you do know. So I love it, man. I appreciate the answers to those questions.
Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, you know what I love about this conversation? Like, I'm just sitting back taking it all in, and I'm hearing illustrations. Y'all teaching, adding so much value. But this is right at the intersection of where we are operating at the Brothers Influence Podcast, where we are looking to encourage men, particularly Black men, in the areas of life, leadership, and community. Mm-hmm. And so when you threw out the initial category of parenting versus dad, as you continue to explain it, what I started to hear, and the other brothers will hear this, will understand this, what I started to hear was management versus leadership.
Let's roll the word.
I'm writing that down, brother.
Let's clock in. Management versus leadership.
Because leadership is all about the relationship, right? It's so difficult because you can't really manage well. I mean, you can manage okay, you can get by without it, but you can't manage at your best without relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think that's what you're saying, bro. I think that's what you're saying, right?
I'm still in that, bro. I'm telling you that now.
And how this touches every area. It touches every area of our lives.
Yeah. And if I could go ahead,
we got to be able to build that relationship. And so when we talk about managing and even parenting, it's you're managing processes and procedures, and you're managing the structure. But absent the connection comes from being dad, from having the relationship, from being the leader of your home.
Mm-hmm. Hey, he's right in there. You in the text. Hey, but here's also if I could just add on to what he was saying, which is beautiful, right? Even from the leadership perspective of building the relationship, that's also another way for leaders to also manage change, right? If I have a relationship, it's easier for me to manage change. Whereas from a perspective, it's all about the complexities, right? When we think about a leader versus a manager, a leader manages, or he helps with change, whereas a manager, he manages complexities, right? All the structures, the processes, and that go within the business. Where the leader is forward looking, he's looking at, okay, how are these processes working? What is the management doing? Is it going towards, right, the vision? Is it working towards those different things? Is there something that I'm missing? Do I need to make a change? Do I need to build another relationship? Do I need to bring someone else in? So I love the bridge. Love the bridge.
How does it affect my people? How does it affect? So we talk about the hard conversations. And the change is difficult for most people. Change is naturally difficult for everybody to some degree, just lesser for some than others, right? And so when I think about change, I'm like, can I trust who's leading me?
Yeah.
Which is what? Relationship.
Exactly.
Right? Trust is built off relationship. And the leaders, their magic bullet is trust. Yeah. Right? It's trust. Again, only if, right, they have the relationship,
man,
and they stay true to what they're saying, right? That relationship is built and is consistent. Yeah, right. Don't build a relationship and then drop me. Right? Got to stay with me. Got to stay consistent.
Yeah. See, listen, I got another one for you, bro. See, when we talk about the trust building, we talk about the consistency. I usually use the illustration of pocket change. Their pocket change, right? I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but when we talk about trust, the trust building happens with the little deposits. That's where that consistency comes in, the little deposits, because the withdrawals are the trust breaking situations that happen. And the thing about those are, well, most people don't want to admit it, that they're inevitable. There's going to be something that's going to come against the trust that you've built with whomever, right? Whether it's your children, your spouse, your boss, your peers, the people that work for you. There's something going to come. There's something going to challenge it. It could be as simple as, some level of change that you don't even have control over, but it'll make them look at you like, okay, now what you going to do? Right? But if you're not putting the work in, if you're not being consistent and making those small deposits, when the withdrawal comes, you don't want to be in the negative. You want to have equity. I call it trust equity. You want to have equity so that your relationship can continue to survive, not only survive but thrive. So what does that mean? You got to be building trust as much as you can on the front end, right? And like, there's so much that I don't know as a parent. I have a 5-year-old son, so I'm working and trying to be the things that I never saw growing up and I never had access to. And I'm just thinking, like, man, I'm waiting for these teenage years. I know I was tough, and I know most teenagers are. Just, that's just a part of life. And so I'm like, I need to be building this equity up right now. I ain't gonna wait until he's 15 to try and figure out how to have these conversations. So I'm the things that I'm doing now, I'm trying to sow. And it doesn't mean I have it all figured out. It just means that this is my attempt. I'm trying to be the man that I feel like God's called me to be.
Boy, and you just, oh my gosh. So I'm going to try to keep it together and keep it real quick, fast, and just all the way. But hey, you on the Brothers of Influence podcast, brother. This is what happens when you get on here and drop stuff. Yeah. But bro, when you sit there and said about, again, trust equity, right? Making those small deposits, right? The first thing I'm thinking about, because one of the things that we're always talking about doing is building generational wealth and legacy. In most cases, we think of from a legacy and generational wealth is about leaving them a check.
Yep, go for it. Go for it.
We're leaving a check. But I'd rather leave a legacy, again, of those small deposits that, again, it doesn't matter if I give them a check or not. Made a great investment into who they are as they can make a check.
Yeah.
Right. They can make a check, but can they get through those tough days, those times where, again, it came out of nowhere, but they remember what daddy said. They remember that small deposit. They remember that memory. They remember that whatever it was that deposit gave them at that time, that they were able to go back and make a withdrawal on. Oh my goodness. Right. So now we're talking about ATMs. The ATM will only give you what you deposit. If you didn't deposit it, you can't go to the ATM and get anything out.
There it is.
Right. Yeah, that's the purpose of an ATM, right? You put your card in, you put your PIN in, and then it takes you to an account. If the account is zero, that means you didn't make any deposits.
Yeah.
I can't give you nothing. Man. But if you go to the ATM, you've been making deposits, then you're going to have something in there. Now, depending on how much you're putting in there, depends on how much you worked on it. The work is going to depend on how much you're depositing into that account. So the account that we're talking about here is our children as fathers.
Yeah.
It's not all about the money. We talking about legacy. We talking about money. We talking about. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about as a father. What am I depositing into my children? As it talks to fatherhood and identity, because that's what we're talking about. Am I making those consistent deposits from a leadership perspective?
Yeah.
And then am I managing what it is that I'm depositing? Right? Because it's the same thing. If I make the deposits and I go to the ATM and I'm like, wait, I made the deposit, but I don't remember going back and taking that money out, that card, and spending the money, then I'm not doing real good management. That's not good money management. Yeah. That's not being a stewardship, being a good steward over what has been given to me. And our children have been given to me. And I'm done. I done got it on the tangent. My bad.
No, you're preaching, man. I'm in awe.
Come on, bro. We on fire. It's the Brothers of Influence podcast.
Yeah. I gotta say real quick, Shante, just real quick. There's one phrase that I wrote down, and I have a perfect example. That leadership versus management, right? And we talked about change. And one thing my wife always talks about with my daughter is I think not change happening to her, but change happening with her, right? And for instance, this week we're spending our family. We got another baby coming in a week and a half. We don't have the space yet. We don't have a big enough space, so the crib is going in my daughter's room. And my daughter was away at camp, and I was like, I need to get this crib up, and I need to put it in there and get something off the checklist before the baby get here, right? And the whole time I'm putting it together, my wife is like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. I'm like, why, baby? We got to get this done. She said, for her to come home and to see a crib in her room, I know that sounds little to you, but that stuff happening to her and not with her. She needs to be here. She needs to be a part of this process. And that's management versus leadership. I was managing what needed to be done, but that leadership is us doing it together and change happening with them. So I just wanted to bring that full circle.
Bro, no, that's good. And I'm done. And I know Shantae keep jumping in my bad boat. But hey, my wife hit me on the same game, boy. My wife hit me on the same game. So we just moved into a new crib. And then my oldest daughter, she's 19 now, but yeah, about to be 20. Anyhow, so she's getting ready to go to college, right? And we was about to do this whole transition. And my wife was like, no, we got to do it before she goes to college. Because we don't want her to go to college and then come back to a new, right? We want her to have the experience of going with, so she can be a part of so she can feel the change, so she can feel everything, so she can be a part of it. Yeah. That's so key. So key. Yeah. See, our wives be teaching us too. Don't think we got it all together, boy. Shout out to the wives. Shout out to the wives and the mothers. Appreciate y'all.
Leaders are learners, man, and I think that what we're finding out is if you push man to the side, you push husband to the side, you push father to the side. What we find is the leader in each of us, right? Mm-hmm. Uphold and puts us in a position to be effective in any or all of those areas.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right, go ahead, Shantae.
You guys kind of hit it, but I said this before. I said it was a book I read, but. Can you hear me?
I can.
Y'all can't hear
me? Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can hear you. You're a little low, bro.
Oh, hold on. Is that better?
Yeah. Keep it coming a little bit.
That's better?
Yeah.
All right. You guys kind of cover it, but I mentioned this before. One of the books I read, and the guy said leadership versus management. You lead people and you manage things. You guys kind of hit that anyway. But so I wanted to throw this out here for you, Norm. So what's something interesting about you that someone may not know?
Something interesting about me. The average person might not know. That's a good question, man. That's a good question.
Something that we wouldn't know by looking at you.
Okay. By looking at me, I say not by looking at, but one of the most important things about me is that my relationship with Christ. I think most people knowing me, but if someone who didn't know me, that's one of the most important things to me. And it's a new transition. Been in church my entire life, but didn't know God until about 8 months ago. Yeah. So and now my life just is captivated by Him. So I think that's something I don't have to, pretend no more or play church. But He's a part of me, and that relationship is there. And that was the key thing, was that relationship. Back to fatherhood and being in His image and how He created us to lead. It always goes back to the Father. It always points back to Him. So, all right, don't get. Yep, that's one thing.
Yep, that's powerful. Just to continue the illustration, all of us on here are men of faith, and I think that we all can understand the experience of getting caught up in what looks like the management of religion or management of church culture, blase, et cetera, versus the leadership of Jesus Christ, who we model ourselves after. Yeah. Who is really calling us to relationship. Right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because really it is all about relationship. Everything else about that doesn't even really matter. Yeah. Right? That's all. It's all management at that particular point. Yeah. Right?
Let me tell y'all a story real quick. me tell y'all a story. So, wow, bro. First of all, brother Norman, thank you for joining us, man. Listen, you fitting right in, man.
I love you.
I felt the fire and the passion. You know what I'm saying? It started to well up in me. I was holding myself back a little bit, but it's because you in position to do what you created to do.
Amen.
Mhm.
Hallelujah.
So yeah. So listen, I grew up in church all my life, like Brother Norman. Matter of fact, I'm a PK. So you know what they say in our communities about PKs.
Yeah.
So I've had my time out in the fields, but yeah. So I found myself working with some children, some middle school age group. It's been some years ago now, but I ended up teaching on the 10 Commandments. We all know the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
When you think about that management, that structure. So in addition to that, so I'm a PK, been in church all my life. I was adopted as an infant. So relationships have always been somewhat difficult or elusive or just, knowing how to identify genuine, real connection, having healthy relationships, and so on and so forth. It's an area that I'm still growing in. I haven't even grown all the way into it, but by the grace of God, I'm here. And I have, brothers, I'm shoulder to shoulder with brothers like you. Okay, so I'm gonna try to help get to my point. I was teaching on the 10 Commandments, and God gave me some revelation just a few years ago in that period of time where I was teaching the kids that when you look at the 10 Commandments, it's like the first 6 of the 10 are telling you how, or the first 4 of the 10 tell you how to relate to God. The last 6 tell you how to relate to people. And so it's no coincidence that Jesus summed it up with 2 principles, which were to love God and to love people.
Yeah.
Because the point from the beginning was to learn how to connect with God and learn how to connect with and love others. And so if that wasn't meaty enough, I'm like, okay, thank you, Lord. Take it even further, me being an adopted person. So there's illustration in the word. It talks about we're grafted in, we're adopted people, right? As Gentiles. Okay, so y'all know that. So when you talk about salvation and we look at the word, we look at these structures and we look at these systems. It's not that it's like when I was adopted. When I was adopted, my parents picked me up, and I was an infant. I was less than 1 year old. They didn't look at me and say, "Hey, now that you're our, or before you become ours, you need to make sure that you keep your grades up, that you do your chores," right? They didn't have a whole bunch of stipulation. There was no contract. When I came into the family, it was you are ours and we are yours, and this is who we are and this is what we do. So when you look at this, it's Revelation changed my entire perspective. When I look at the Old Testament, as God was saying, it's not that I'm saying that you have to do these things to be with me. It's because you're mine and I am yours. This is who we are, and this is what we do.
Absolutely.
The difference between management and leadership. Because management would have just stuck me on the rules. The 10 rule. Look at the 10 on the wall. That's what you follow. To keep the roof over your head, the clothes on your back, right? In order for me to bless you, right? In order for me to claim you as part of my family. That's management. Leadership says, "Nah, this is who we are. You are mine and I am yours. This is who we are, and this is what we do."
I'm stuck, man. I'm stuck.
I'm
stuck.
And I like how you put it. And that's where a lot of people they miss it, because you don't do it because you have to. You do it because of who you are.
Exactly.
And like you're saying, and that folds right back into what we're talking about as we're talking about fatherhood and identity, knowing who we are as fathers, right? And so, because like Ian, when you said that about the leadership versus management, it actually triggered me again. Just like when I said I was talking to Norm and I first seen the post, it just something lifted up off of me, because it's like that's how I felt. That's how I had been feeling, and I couldn't deal with it until I had something to put with it, and it was that phrase, good dad, bad parent.
Yeah.
because I know I'm a great dad, but bad parent, and that's the management. That's literally what I was doing. I lost my way and I was managing my daughter, and she's not something to be managed. That was my issue. That's what I realized. That's what the problem was. That's why I'm getting frustrated. That's why I'm doing this. She's a child. She's 3 years old. I can't deal with her like that, right? But ever since then, it's just that burden's been lifted off. I'm the good. I know I'm a good dad. I know I'm a good parent. Not that I even wasn't per se, but when we can't see our way, anything goes, right? And so yeah, that was I love that story. That was a very very awesome story. So I had asked Norm about uh three of your greatest challenges, and I wanted to focus in on the co-parenting because I think that's probably something you deal with a lot because you deal with fathers, right? You're a family advocate and a fatherhood coordinator, so that's what you deal with a lot. So and you're experiencing it
Yeah,
at the
I'm
same
blended
time.
family. Yeah.
So can you give us two important principles within that sphere that has helped you and that you've been able to share with others to help them?
I think within co-parenting, two of the biggest things that I think has really helped improve my co-parenting relationship. So my co-parenting relationship was wild starting off. It was all types of wild. There was no boundaries, which is my first one. You got to have good boundaries. The whole good fences make good neighbors is a fact, right? And another thing, I think, focusing on the child, right? Everything else clearing out the window. And that's the third thing is that stuff takes time. I don't care what book you read or whatever resource you come across, implementing those things and getting rid of bad behaviors and bad habits, it takes time. But another big thing that increased our co-parenting relationship, I think, was improving our communication. One thing that had a lot of resistance in the beginning was my wife, the mother of my child, and her significant other. They've been together for like 4 or 5 years. We all got a group chat, and that's how we all communicate. That has helped a lot of the little extra side stuff get to the side, and it makes it only about the child. So those are three things that I always push for my parents, especially I work with a lot of dads and working with boundaries. One of the first rules I always tell them that we work on is do not do pickup and drop offs at each other's houses. Find a spot that you guys, this may be a neutral spot, a police station, a fire station. And not only does that help you and protect you, but it protects the other person. So those are some things that have really come into place within helping with co-parenting.
Am I good? Jump in. Hey, that's beautiful. And I know we're talking about co-parenting, but I think that's so good that it doesn't even it's even with a blend. That's just good characteristics for just parenting, period.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Establishing the boundaries.
Yeah.
Focusing on the child. Yeah. Right. And then time. Yeah. AKA I wrote down patience.
Yeah.
Right. And then you dropped in communication, which is again a leader's number weapon. Right. Yeah. Our ability to communicate allows us to build those relationships effectively.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's in our communication that we're able to build that relationship and then also establish a trust. Right. And if our communication is consistent, right, if our boundaries are consistent, if that focus on the child is consistent, if our time management and patience with the situation is consistent, then I that you have the pieces of the puzzle, right? Mm-hmm. All pieces of the puzzle, right? That's beautiful, bro. Beautiful.
Yeah, man. Some of the things we talk about, or I guess many of the things we talk about, have to deal with self-care. And we actually, jump into the conversation around mental health, but boundaries are vitally important And I think more men need to hear that. So thank you for sharing that, bro. That's I mean, just to think like, why do I have to drop my kid off at a fire station? But the purpose of the boundaries protect both sides.
Right. And that's because again, we're always focused on the impact and the effect to us, but never looking at that fact of what we do and how it impacts the other person. Yeah. Right. So the boundary is just as important for me, my boundary, right? Knowing where my boundary is, right? Establishing where that boundary is, understanding it, and then making sure that I respect it. Yeah. Not just for the other person, but also for myself.
Yeah.
Because if I respect the boundary that I place for myself and place for the other person, then everyone who comes in contact with me will respect the same boundary as well.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
And respecting boundaries and is a part of our mental health.
Yes, mm-hmm. Yeah, protecting your peace.
Yeah, it's if you don't respect it, you're disrespecting yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't respect your own boundaries, you're disrespecting yourself.
Yeah. And I'm gonna jump in, and I know Shantae, and then I'm done. Like everything we've been talking about, right? If I think about it, like everything that we've been talking about and looking at, so I want to kind of pull us right back into what we're talking about, right? Healthy fatherhood and identity. All these different things that we're talking about and demonstrating that we need to be doing as fathers or whatnot. Again, making those small deposits, right? Leaving that legacy. What better way to do it than what we're living, than what it is not living what we're supposed to be doing, modeling it for our children, right? And teaching it as well. So everything that we're talking about, it's we have to do it so we can then show them, right? And then teach them, right? And then reinforce it again, right? Through the modeling, through just the consistency of using the same behavior and communication constantly over and over and over, right? And allowing them to ask the question. And I'm done. I promise you I'm done. I get like 3 or 4 more times before, it's like closing the sermon, right? They got 3 more times before I got that, and I'm done, right? But we have to allow them, we got to allow them to ask the questions too. That's one of the things that I've gotten better at, especially as I became a coach. Because as a coach, one of the things we do is we ask questions, right? The power of a question, right? Because what that allows you to do and allows the other person to do is think.
Yeah.
Right. And if someone asks the question, that means they're thinking about something. You then have the opportunity to give them an answer. And how you give them the answer allows them to understand, okay, and I would even say this goes back to what you were talking about with the conversations. The best way to have a conversation is what? Ask questions. If I ask a question, that means then I got to give a response. Yeah. Now, I don't have to give an answer. Ooh, that's so good right there. Because if I give an answer, then it's done. If I give a response, that should spark another question.
Man.
I'm done.
I got a lot of notes. I'll tell you that.
You do have a comment in the chat, Shantae. So whenever you're ready.
No, go ahead.
All right. Our brother Lorenzo just jumped in. He said he heard of a few fathers. I think it's just touching back on some of your boundary conversation. Moving back in with their families after being divorced. They're not together, but they are living and co-parenting together. And so he was wanting to know what were some of your thoughts on that?
To be honest, my thoughts is just as another parent. This ain't no director Norman of a program. I think the parents should really establish what they want to do before moving back in. Kids, especially depending on what was the nature of the breakup, if it's due to a lot of conflict and a lot of arguing and it's not a healthy and safe place necessarily, or ending on bad terms, and I would suggest that there be more counseling, seeing mediation before they jump back in the loop. Because, the thing is, as resilient as we like to see our kids, is look at our kids as, right? Like a book that we were talking about, Shantae, in our last conference, your body keeps scars of the trauma. Like your body keeps tally of trauma. And I think if it's a traumatic situation, there's a lot of arguing and fighting, then that's maybe not necessarily the best move. Take it time at, if you guys are thinking about getting back together, maybe starting off with some weekend trips together as a family, some play dates together, and then slowly transitioning that. I'm all for marriage and coming back together if it's healthy. So that would be my suggestion, to take time and understand that. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, because there has to be. Well, just go back to the things you said. Boundaries first, and then you said have to be about the child, right? Focusing on the child. And when you even brought that up, and I'm glad he brought that. Lorenzo posted that, because I think too often people say they're focusing on the child, but you can't really focus on the child if there's no boundaries,
Mm.
because if, because you kind of you alluded to it, Norm, but that kids see that. You can't get nothing over on kids, even if they don't know how to explain it and express it. You can't get anything over on a child. They see what's going on, they know what's going on, and whether they can express it or not, it's affecting them. And so I and correct me if I'm wrong, but I just see that as, if you, and I believe that's why you put it first. If you don't have the boundary, it's going to be hard to focus on the child, because the conflict can still be there, the situations can still arise, because you guys haven't sit down as adults, as parents of a child, and said, okay, this is what we need to do, and this is how we're going to do it.
Mm.
Would you say I'm on point with that?
Absolutely.
But yeah, because I think the boundaries, and we've talked about it several times before. People, I think people miss what it is, the impact of it, and how effective it can be. It can be, because even in life, if I'm a ex alcoholic or drug addict or whatever, sex addict or whatever, if I don't set boundaries for myself, pretty soon I'm not gonna be an ex nothing. I'm gonna fall right back into that. If I went to prison. If I didn't get out of prison with a plan to say what I'm not gonna do in the situations I'm not gonna put myself in, I could have been back in prison, like a lot of people I know went back to prison, going back doing the same thing, or the only thing they ever knew, hanging around the same people, and you fall back into those same habits.
Mm.
So I think that's real important.
No, I like that. I like that. Those
So
boundaries are important.
it's crazy, a lot of this conversation, because I know Norm is funny. He just said about the 8 months. I've known Norm about 8 months, so I see that as a divine thing when I
Yeah.
came on to the meeting every Tuesday we had with fathers, and several of the things we're talking about now, we've talked about it within the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Just came back around in this podcast, and and last week the conversations around like co-parenting and
Oh yeah.
dealing with that
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
and it really, some of the conversations, I didn't talk that much, but it was just like I was just listening to the men being men, because we're men there, and we can be men, we can share our hearts, we can let people know how we feel frustrated, and we're there to encourage each other. And so I brought that up to say that if you don't have people you can communicate with like that, to be honest with you about whatever situation you're going through as a man, you're missing something.
Yeah.
And I think that taps back into boundaries, right? Being able to have that person. Because I know when I talk to these guys, I meet with these guys once a week too. And when we have a conversation about something, I share something, hey, they there to say, maybe you should think about this, or maybe you should do this or that. So how did this group start, the men's group, and kind of going back into how your whole fatherhood program started? So that's kind of what I said that to say. Tell us about the fatherhood program and how that got started.
So I've worked in Head Start by accident for 10 years, being honest. I started off, I was in college, I was broke. I signed up to sub. I signed up for high school. Some got messed up in the system after I took a week-long position, and they put me in preschool. So I did one day. It's like, all right, I really need the money. And I came home, and I said, I'll never go back there again. The kids had snotty nose, all this whining. And my boy was like, bro, you need to go back. You signed up for a week. I was like, bro, it's by accident. He said, just finish out the week. It's like, all right. And I went back the second day. And all them kids came running up to me because they never seen really a black male in preschool education. So I know, what this like, especially owning a daycare. But, they just didn't see that. I reminded them of their uncle and their cousin or their dad. So it was just so much love. And I ended up working in preschool for a little bit, in the classroom for a little bit, then did special education for a little bit. But then I was a family advocate for a while. But what I kept doing is whenever there was a mom there, I would reach out and say, well, where dad at? And a lot of times there's a dad that was present. He just didn't feel accepted in preschool. There's preschool culture, like most preschools. So I started to create like just little small opportunities, like little donuts for dads. I think I did chop it up night where you got to talk and get a haircut. And we did something for dads. Then the school district was like, you know what? In our guidelines, they want more father involvement. Would you be interested in creating a fatherhood program for all of our preschools? I think it was like 13 of them. So I created a program to focus on father engagement and advocacy, right? So that was 5 years ago. Now, I'm being 100% honest. It was a good program because we had dads coming in for donuts for dads and coming to all the events. But one thing that I kept ignoring is the advocacy side that I did a lot. I helped a lot of dads get jobs and things like that. But what I really knew deep down, I knew these dads weren't keeping these jobs. I knew after 30 days they was leaving or we'll help them get housing. And before you know it, they got evicted. I knew those were things, but I was just trying to get checklists saying, yep, I got that done. I fell into the checklist culture. Like most of us do sometimes. You get so caught up in numbers and then I'll be honest, these predominantly white institutions and schools where it's numbers, not that management versus leadership and relationship.
Come on.
And I would see dads in the corners at the grocery store that I helped get a job 30 days. And I act like I don't even see him just because I don't want to hear him tell me, oh, bro, I don't even work there no more. So starting this group, when the pandemic started, we want to stay connected to fathers in the community. And me and my boy Marielle, we started these fatherhood groups where we were having conversations. And y'all thought that these were for you, Shante, but I learned so much more about these groups and I understood how much we needed to service the person and not just the need or the need in the job. Don't get me wrong. I help a dad get a job in a minute, right? But a lot of times them be the symptoms of not having a job, not having housing, and the wound be so much deeper. And it's that fatherhood piece that not knowing their identity and who they are. So it's through these groups that I got to understand those things. So although I have a fatherhood program for 5 years, it looks good on paper. But what I'm really trying to do now is what's important to me. That's just the truth.
Hold on, man. Big applause, bro.
Yeah. That's what's up. And you kind of went there a little bit, man. One, that's just, yeah, you could have just led with that and we could have called this a podcast, brother, because that was beautiful. That was just a great summary, right? And just, yeah, that was powerful. But I do have a question. And you hit on it, right? Because you talked about identity, and that was actually where I wanted to kind of go, because I want us to really connect with that real quick, because I think that's really the challenge, not just for people in general, but definitely when we think about fathers, right? When we think about trauma, when we think about the things that we've experienced as men and different things, and then coming into this thing called parenting, called fatherhood, and we're like, yeah, right, I'm supposed to try to, like, how am I supposed to do that? And it's funny because when you look up the definition of identity, right, it talks about, again, there's a specific portion of it that talks about your ability to make decisions, right? And when we think about just what we've been talking about, even when we think about leadership and management, right, it's all about our ability to make a decision. But the decision is guided based on, right, kind of, especially from a fatherhood perspective, how strong our identity is, how strong our belief in who we are is, right? So I guess my question and what I kind of want you to speak to, you kind of spoke to it, but I want to challenge you to go a little bit deeper in it. Just for a guy that might be listening right now or be listening to this recording a little bit later and says, hey, yeah, I understand the fatherhood, but look here, reality, I'm challenging with the identity component. Like, I don't know how to make that connection. I don't know how to bridge that gap. Like, how does your program help them to connect, right? To connect. So again, when we talk about those boundaries and even, you know, the focus on the child, how can I focus on the child when I don't know who I am?
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. So that identity piece, man, if you can just, I know I threw like just a big boomerang in there, but I just really think I don't want us to get off here without touching that. Like, what does that identity really look like? And what do you have just as, you know, what you're doing? If I was a father that came to you and said, hey, bro, I'm really struggling with this fatherhood, parenting, and identity component. Okay. How would you help me out, bro?
All right. So a lot of times, one of my first questions, a lot of what you're asking to, you're going to get it early. I'm still learning and I don't know fully. All right. So I'm be honest. One thing that has helped me that is always gets me close to the right direction is asking the question, like you say, ask question, is what is your relationship with your father like? That teaches you so much more than you can imagine, whether they were never there or whether it was, you know, a foggy relationship or whether, I mean, that's been the beginning, because a lot of times of how they see their father, they act out of that womb, right? Even if it's, my dad was never there, so now I'm gonna do all these things so my kids ain't never had to, have to experience what I felt. That's not necessarily the answer either. Just giving them everything, being I need to do this, I need to do this, where you're exhausting yourself and you're not being present because it's the checklist of what the hurt that I feel. I never want my child to feel that. So a lot of it's been being honest of trying to understand more, being in my word more, right? Because it always points back there, man. It always does. As much as you think you're gonna caught on to something, you look into it deep enough, it's gonna go back. You feel me? So right. A lot of it's been that Shantae hit on it. Is that community of fathers? Is I'm learning from other fathers, from their strength and their weaknesses. We gotta share all the come ups. Oh yeah, I did this. No, bro, this is where I took an L. Nope, this is where I'm still taking L's. If you could stay away from this, bro, this will really help you. And that's really what I've been kind of doing within the podcast, is to share stories, to build a community, to understand our identity, that we were made to lead. I always tell my dad, especially who are married, that you're the head of the house, but you're not ahead of your house, right? Of really coming in humility, because being a leader means you're taking the biggest sacrifices as well. You know, it ain't about I do whatever I want. So really talking to him about what leadership is, understanding what God called love to be, because what God says love is completely different than what the world is. So I think it's going there in love, identity, father hurt, and that's really where the work has been going. So I'm walking in that direction. I ain't found it yet, haven't found all the answers, but I feel like I'm on to something. I'll say that.
Hey, bro. Hey, that was, for somebody who didn't know, that was a phenomenal answer. Right? That was a phenomenal answer, man. So what I heard too in there, and again, these brothers are gonna definitely connect me when I say this, was again the self-awareness, right? The self-awareness piece. And so I'm on Shantae, bro, and Norm, like, if you ever want to expand, or like, this brother knows how to use the disc, right? Utilize him from that perspective, right? Especially when we think about being able to help each other, or a father identify who he is. I think the strongest way for me to identify myself and to see my wrongs, my ups, my downs, my strengths, my weaknesses, was through the disc. When I identified with who I was and what was going on, it didn't just change just from a professional standpoint. It changed across the board, right? So I would just even put that in your tool belt, right? And you have a brother that's with you that knows how to break it down, and he can do what he can do it, right? And help you out with that identity piece and taking that into another level. So, but hey, that was a great answer, bro. Great answer. I like that.
It was a great
Brother, you are a official, unofficial member of the Brothers.
Hey,
Yeah, man. Listen, you can rock with us anytime.
man, bro, this
Anytime, bro. You know, I appreciate you. But I think but you kind of explained your journey and your path towards discovering purpose. And that's everything we're talking about. And you touched on the life, you touched on the leadership, and you touched on the community. So shout out to Shantae for connecting us and bringing you on, man. It's just so powerful. When you said you think you're on to something, let me be one to confirm, and I'm sure the other two will say the same thing. You are on to something, brother.
Yeah. Just stay with it, bro. Stay obedient. Stay in the word. Look for the leadership and the guidance to the one who led you to where you're at now. Boy, don't give me the going. But I'm just saying, kids, stay with it, right? And then stay consistent, right? And then if you ever need a rap, I know you got Shantae, but I'm telling you right now, you've been adopted, brother. Officially adopted. So if you need something, just holler at us. Yeah.
Where can people reach out to you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. You can look up Norman Young, Facebook, Norman Young or the Dad Movement. That's a new podcast that we've been going for about 6 months. It's on YouTube, Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts. Yep. So I enjoy doing it. It's not jaded by numbers. I'm not focused on results. In workplace, sometimes you got to do all these, like we said, somewhat of these checklists. And this is something that I just enjoy doing. I love hearing people's story. So you can find me on the Dad Movement podcast.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Well, listen, we went knee deep real quick. Matter of fact, I think we was probably the water was above our head. Like
we swam to the top, brother. We had to get some air because
y'all know how we do with the Brothers in Influence podcast, where we stand to encourage, inspire, and add value to Black men in the areas of life, leadership, and community. And this is episode 14. Without a doubt, value has been added to us, and therefore value has been added to those of you that have been rocking with us, tuning in. Thank you for joining us. We love y'all. You can find Norman, as he says, is scrolling on the bottom of the screen on LinkedIn and Facebook, Norman R. Young, and look out for the Dad Movement podcast. Man, I'm just going to go ahead and speak it, manifest it. We're going to continue to collaborate going forward. Yeah. We continue to build. We continue to learn from each other. Iron sharpens iron. Yeah. We're all fathers on here, so we have a lot to learn. We don't have it all figured out. And, I want to shout out that quote. I put it in the chat. You are the head of the house, but you are not ahead of your house. Man, I got that from my tool belt now. So. That's what comes out of these. We all kind of exchange.
Yeah, bro. You said it, dude. You said we don't have it all together. And you know what? To be honest, I'm glad we don't.
Yes.
Right. I'm glad we don't, because again, we wouldn't be able to have these conversations, right? We wouldn't be if I have all the answers, then right. But yeah, so this was so great.
Man, thank you, brothers. I really appreciate y'all, man. This has been a blessing. It's blessed my soul. It filled my cup. I really needed this, so I appreciate you, brothers. I do.
Shantae, final words.
See you next week. Holla. we
It's all right.
up for the day, did we?
Dope, man.
Yeah.